the forest, wild and free.
Through the forest, wild and free.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Steadily hunter, wild and free.
Steadily hunter, wild and free.
Atlanta run alone.
Atlanta run alone.
Atlanta was born to King Iasus, a daughter. But King Iasus wanted a son. And he had his servants take that baby girl child into the forest, to the darkest place, the most dangerous part of the forest. And there she was abandoned to be devoured by wild animals. But, catching her scent, coming was a great she-bear. And the she-bear sniffed the air and came close and licked at the girl, and gathered her up in her paw and carried her to her den. And there the she-bear suckled her milk. She drank the she-bear's milk, and she began to grow. She wrestled with the other bear cubs there in the den. She grew strong. She was fed with scraps and fruit and food, and meat hunted by the she-bear. And so Atlanta grew there in the forest, a wild girl. But she was strong, quick to learn. As soon as she could run, she made a dash through the forest. She was so quick, she could catch any running creature. She was so fast as a bear charging. And she was good at wrestling and strong and quick to learn. Time passed. When she was a girl, about your age, she saw other young people. She heard them in the forest. They were boys hunting. She watched, secretly, stealthily. She was not seen. They used bows and arrows. She was amazed that they could take a bird in flight down to the ground. When they rested to drink wine, she crept forward and took a bow and a sheath of arrows. And she hid, again, stealthy. She was not seen. And after that, in the forest, she practiced, day after day, with bow and arrow. She could bring any fast bird down from the sky. She could put an arrow through a creature that no one else could see. And so she lived, powerful. She had an oracle, a message from the gods there in the forest. Atlanta must, at no cost, marry. Atlanta, run alone. Once, two centaurs, wild creatures, half man, half horse, 4 hooves, running, came chasing her. They desired her. Atlanta was beautiful. She was afraid. She fled. She turned and loosed an arrow and struck the first centaur, Rhecus, through his heart. She lined another arrow and shot the second, Aeneas, through his heart. The 2 centaurs fell dead. Now a young woman, Atlanta knew that there would be a hunt, a Caledonian boar hunt in the forest. She wanted to take part, to compete. She stepped forward, appeared to the other young men. Meleager was the greatest of all the hunters in Greece. His uncles scoffed. How can a girl take part in a boar hunt? She is too weak, too slow. But Meleager looked at her. She looks strong and fast. Allow her to join. Well, so it was that she was permitted to take part in the Caledonian boar hunt. They went into the forest and they flushed out the great boar with its sharp tusks. They flushed it out from a watercourse overgrown with willows. The boar dashed at them, charging them. The first 2 hunters were gored to death. A third, Nestor, climbed up the tallest tree away from the boar. Another came forward, Talamon, but he tripped and fell. The boar was going to gore him, but Peleus, muscular Peleus, strongest of all Greek wrestlers, ran forward to pick up his friend Talamon, but he was too slow. The boar was going to gore him as well. But at that moment, Atlanta ran forward. She put an arrow to the string of the bow. She let fly the arrow, and it pierced the great boar behind its ear. The bear shrieked in pain and disappeared, trampling into the undergrowth. Meleager, the great hunter, went with his spear after the boar and pierced it to its heart. The boar lay dead. Meleager skinned the great boar and brought the pelt back to where the other hunters were gathered. Meleager's uncles cried, "Meleager, the greatest hunter in Greece! Meleager wins the prize!" But Meleager shook his head and stepped forward. He walked up to Atlanta, who stood on the edge of the gathering. "You drew the first blood with your arrow. Even if I had not pierced the boar's heart with my spear, the boar would have bled to death. Yours is the prize." And he gave the pelt to Atlanta. She had won. But Meleager's uncles were angry. "You cannot give this prize to this girl!" They drew their swords to kill her. Meleager jumped forward, drew his swords, and fought with his uncles. They fought until all were slain. Meleager, what tragedy, and his uncles, bloody, dead, at the edge of the forest. Atlanta had won. At what cost? Through the forest, wild and free.
Through the forest, wild and free.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Atlanta run alone.
Atlanta run alone.
Now at the funeral of Meleager, there was going to be a competition. At the funeral games, there would be a wrestling match. Peleus, muscular, stood forward. He would surely win. But Atlanta came as well. Can a woman join a wrestling competition? She fought against the first young man. She tossed him to the ground, pinned him down. The second two, she won easily. She was swift. She skipped to the side and tripped each one, pinned them down upon their backs, until in the final bout of the competition, she was face to face with Peleus, strongest of all Greek wrestlers. He was cautious. He respected Atlanta. She had saved him from being gored by the boar when he had tried to rescue his friend, Helen. He came slowly, approaching, shifting from foot to foot. He jumped forward, but she was too quick to escape his grip. He turned. Once more, he seized her by the shoulders, but she slipped away, as quick as lightning. A third time he approached. She tripped him, turned him, fell upon him. Peleus was pinned to the ground. Atlanta had won the wrestling match. Atlanta, so powerful. Through the forest, wild and free.
Through the forest, wild and free.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Atlanta fly, foot against stone.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Atlanta run alone.
Atlanta run alone.
Now her own father, King Iasus, heard of her success, her victories. You are my daughter, Atlanta. It is with regret that I left you, abandoned at birth. You are as strong as any young man, no stronger. I claim you as my daughter. Come home with me to my palace. And daughter, my first honor to you will be to find you a husband. Did Atlanta want a husband?
No.
Atlanta, boldly independent, she needed no man, but she could not say this to her father, Iasus. Very well, father. I will marry any man who can outpace me in a foot race. She knew that she was quick. And father, if he fails, he must have his head cut off. The first suitor came forward. Atlanta was not just strong and quick, she was beautiful. They stood at the starting line. The race began, but swift Atlanta, fleet foot, she ran ahead and disappeared into the distance, crossing the finishing line before he had barely started. He had his head cut off. A second race. The suitor who came forward said, "Let me have a head start." And so he was put at the midway point. The race began, but already within a few paces, Atlanta was overtaking him. She defeated him with ease. A third suitor came forward. Let her wear armour to slow her down. He too had a head start. The race began, but even wearing heavy armour, she overtook this man and beat him. Soon the pile of heads had appeared outside King Aias' palace. No more suitors, no more dared to race. But there was one more. Hippomenes. Hippomenes loved Atlanta. He desired her greatly. She was so beautiful, powerful. He knew he could not beat her in a foot race. Hippomenes went to the temple to Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire, and he prayed to her. Aphrodite, let me marry Atlanta. Aphrodite, from the heavens above in Mount Olympus, she looked down. She saw the love in his heart and the desire, and she was touched. "I will help you," said Aphrodite to Hippomenes, "but only if you will make sacrifices to me as soon as you are married. And if you make these sacrifices, if you promise now, then I will give you 3 magical golden apples." He made the promise, and he took the 3 magic golden apples from the goddess of desire, and he carried them with him to King Aias' palace. And there he made his challenge. He was lined up against Atlanta. The race began. Of course, Atlanta ran ahead, but he took an apple and he dropped it on the ground, and glancing over her shoulder, she saw the beautiful fruit. She could not resist. She turned, stooped, and picked it up. But already she was catching him up. Now, shoulder to shoulder, they approached the finishing line. He took the second apple and he threw it to the side. Atlanta turned to retrieve the apple. And now, now, Hippomenes was almost at the finishing line. He was sure to win. Through the forest, wild and free.
Through the forest, wild and free.
Atlanta flies against stone.
Atlanta flies against stone.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Deadly hunter, wild and free.
Atlanta run alone.
Atlanta run alone.
And now the race was coming to its end. Hippomenes had one more apple. He threw it behind. Atlanta turned. She could not resist. She went back to retrieve the apple, and Hippomenes crossed the line. Hippomenes had won. Aias declared there would be a wedding. The wedding was arranged, and warriors and nobles, kings came from many islands, far and wide, all gathered there for the great celebration. Hippomenes was glad. But was Atlanta glad?
No.
Atlanta runs alone. She remembered the oracle that she should never marry at any cost. After the wedding, she turned away from Hippomenes. He followed her. He brought her gifts of shells, flowers, of fruit. She turned him away. She shunned him. He spent all the time following her, and he forgot his promise to Aphrodite. And up on Mount Olympus, Aphrodite watched, and she was angry. She watched as Hippomenes followed Atlanta past the temple in the name of Zeus. And as he passed the temple, she put into Atlanta's heart desire. Atlanta turned. She looked at Hippomenes, and suddenly she fell in love. Oh, what an attractive young man, my husband! And she took him by the hand and she led him into Zeus's temple, and there she embraced him, and she laid with him on the floor of the temple. But up in Mount Olympus, Aphrodite showed Zeus, and he saw that in a temple in his name, this Two mortals were embracing and kissing, and in his fury, this must not happen, he turned Hippomenes and Atlanta into lions. That is the story of Atlanta.